Hello, my name is Loriana Erna Baban. I'm from class PSPF 21C. My ID number 421242117. I will read a scientific article. Study of students' representation ability in Newton Law. Abstract. This research was conducted with the aim of analyzing the representation ability of junior high school students in Banjarmasin on Newton law problem by giving a written test. The research method used was survey research, namely one-shot design. The test was conducted on 102 middle school students who had learning Newton's law material with representation. The result showed that students more easily understand the question in verbal representation than mathematical representation, figures, and tables. The study also shows that students who have high learning outcomes obtain consistently good multi-representation score. So, learning by using multiple representation needs to be done to support the learning outcomes of physics. Introduction. Physics is a branch of science that studies natural phenomena, and scientists explain them with exclusive concepts and theories because they often forget abstract symbolism. Most students do not like physics in school. Or Marpaum et al. 2016. Ornick et al. 2008 state that students have the view that physics is difficult because they must master with various representations such as calculation, formula, experiment, graph, and conceptual explanation used at the same time. For example, students need to be able to transfer from graphical representation to mathematical representation. Similarly, a phenomenon present in a simple mathematical representation can be visualized in graphic form. In physics, lessons are closely related to verbal concept features, graph, and mathematics. Earning Room 2015 student difficulty in understanding physics learning can be minimized by the use of multi-representation. Multi-representation is the use of more than one representation used to describe a process. Widiantius 2015. Multi-representation is an approach in learning that can use a variety of representation displays to a predictable concept will help students to understand the concept of physics that have been studied. Students have different abilities each person. There are prominent certain abilities only, for example, verbal skill only or quantitative skill only. Suhandi and Wibowo 2020. The inability of students to use multi-representation in understanding the concept of physics will be an obstacle or limit of student understanding. Abdurrahman 2016. The result the results show that students better understand the concept of skins well when multi-representation is used at the time of skills learning, and students can be helped to solve problems and encouraged to ask problems. Marpaung 2060. Representation is very important for students in learning a particular concept. Abdurrahman 2016. The benefit of multi-representation provides support data as information to complement cognitive process, limit the likelihood of misinterpretation of representation, and develop deep understanding to strengthen understanding. Ainsworth. Multi-representation consists of representation of words, graphs, image, mathematical tables, and other. Cole 2010. Verbal representation represents a physical concept or process into the form of words or sentence arrangement. Verbal representation can give an understanding of definition to a physical concept. An image representation is a representation that presents a physical concept or process into a real image similar to the original. Image can visualize concepts that are still abstract, so they can be easily understood to go to the next process. A physical representation is the presentation of a concept of a physical process, Risky 2040, or a physical process through physical forms such as free object diagram and movement diagram of object, kinematically. A mathematical representation represents a physical concept or process presented into a mathematical equation. Mathematical representations are usually placed at the end because their function can determine the final outcome of a process. Various research results show that students in general have difficulty in EPA due to the inability to visual and relate with other representation. Or Fatmarianti and Sarwanto 2015, Nguyen 2007. The use of multiple representation in solving introductory physics problems is of great interest to physics education research. There are several studies that discuss the benefit of using various representations in solve physics problems. However, there have been much research that address the types of difficult studies students may have with different types of representation as well as the difficulties they may face when transferring their problem-solving skill across representation. Rosengren et al. 2009 investigation students' thought process when using certain representation, but found no difficulties students face with a representation. In the 2030 curriculum, students are required to more actively seek their own knowledge. Students are accepted not only able to apply but can think at a high level. High level thinking skill require the ability to think critically, logically, and systematically in processing their knowledge. So that student must be able to develop and master different representation or multi-representation ability to solve a problem. When students are faced with a problem situation of physics in classroom learning, then they will seek to understand the problem by solving the problem in a way that is understood by the student. In this paper, it will be explained how the representation that students use when solving Newton law problem. Newton law is one of the physical material that requires multi-representation for solving the problem. Complex problem-solving skills are indispensable in Newton legal material, so students not only memorize formula, but students also have to develop their multi-representation skill mathematically, drawingly, and verbally. If students are not strong in representation their concept in into various forms, students will find it difficult to solve Newton legal physics problems. Method. The research design used in this study is adapted to the survey research method, namely one-shot design. In this design, the research sample was given treatment in the form of giving test of representation ability once to students who had studied Newton legal materials. The collected data is then processed into data that can be analyzed. The purpose of his study was to identify multi-representation abilities that include verbal representation, image, mathematical, and table. This research was conducted in SMP Negeri 14, SMP Negeri 25, and SMP Negeri 28 Banjarmasin. The subject of the study were 102 students who had followed Newton randomly/law learning. The research instrument consists of 10 points of easy problems written in various representation formats: verbal, mathematical, drawing, and table formats. In its implementation, all research subjects were given question data that were done within 19 90 minutes. The quality of student representation is based on the accumulation of answers to each representation format. To reveal how multi-representation skills in each format are used, to use a description of the average data of student grades obtained. Result and discussion. After the multi-representation data collection activities of junior high school students obtain multi-representation ability data present in Table 1. In this table is shown the average score of student multi-representation ability for each of the verbal, drawing, mathematical, and table representation formats. The lowest representation ability is on a table representation with a student average score of 3_75. If in the table format students have not been able to construct the understanding they already know in the form of tables. This happens because they rarely use table representation in answering questions, so students are not used to using table. This is in line with the result of Wati et al. 2019 research that if students are not taught to solve problems with special methods, then students will have difficult answering the question. Image representation ability is also quite low, with the student's average score, which is 5_72. The representation of image is the basis of physics. Students in learning to solve a problem usually use solving in mathematical form, very rarely using representation of image. Students in doing problems are generally taught in the forms of mathematical representation combined with explanation or verbal, so that the student find it is easier to work on problems in mathematical and verbal form. This can be seen in Table 1, which shows that the ability of verbal representation with an average value of 6_55 and a mathematical representation of 6_24. The ability of representation that gets a grade point shows that students more often define the answer of a concept and often the teachers use the lecture method in learning. And the findings of this study show that implicit learning should use various formats of representation. Cole 2004 states that in student physics multi-representation ability is a key characteristic of IPE that contains many calculation and abstract things. Then students are accepted to have multi-representation skill. It can also help students to complete their cognitive process and encourage them to build a deep understanding of the station. Fatima 2060. Many ways can be done for innovation in physical learning by designing teaching, teaching materials that are in accordance with learning objectives such as learning implementation plans, modules, student worksheets, and appropriate media according to the characteristic of teaching material and student. Conclusion: the ability of student representation in solving Newton's law problems from hacks to laws in a row is the ability of verbal mathematical drawing and table representation. Bibliography. Thank you.